James Franklin to Virginia Tech. News so big that we've got to do an emergency reaction in my living room with a non-white t-shirt on. Buddy, this is as big a grand slam as you could ever hope to hit at Virginia Tech. What I didn't say is, man, James Franklin guaranteed to win the ACC. He's guaranteed to win 10 a year. He's guaranteed to go to the playoff. I'm not talking about that because no one can see the future. Franklin himself doesn't know anything like that. What we know is the information that was available and the reality. The reality is the lines really got blurred. The water really got muddy over the past few weeks slash month or so about the quality of coach that James Franklin is. Franklin is one of the 10, conservatively one of the 15 best in the country. None of us 6 months ago would have said, yeah, Virginia Tech's one of the top 15 programs in the country. So when you're able to acquire a coach of that caliber, it's a grand slam. Now, I want you to think a little further down the rabbit hole with me for a second. Forget about the last couple of games he had at Penn State, because there are a lot of theories about why it went sideways. I just think they were all in on defining themselves as championship or bust, which is ill-advised always for the very reasons that we saw play out at Penn State. It didn't work, and Oregon went in there and beat them and took the life out of them, and then it kind of went off the cliff. But I don't want you to think about that. Well, you can do whatever you want to. I'm not thinking about that. Here's what I'm thinking about. This dude was coaching in the semifinal of the college football playoff 11 months ago. And fast forward to November 17th, and I just hired him as the head coach at Virginia Tech. And by the way, he didn't get fired there because of scandal. Like there's nothing more. There's no added context you need to know. They just had a season that went a little bit sideways. By the way, he's the first high-profile coach to have a season go sideways in this new era. It won't be the last. I think we'll learn that in time. And I think time will bear out that it was pretty crazy that Penn State made the move in the knee-jerk fashion they did. Now, it's November 17th, so about Penn State, I've got my own thoughts on that. But as for Virginia Tech, it's November 17th, and we just hired a head coach that was in the playoff, semifinal of the playoff, less than a calendar year ago. Like, who amongst us would have ever thought that we were going to be in that situation a year ago? Just like, forget about the name for a second. Just say the thing out loud. We just hired a college football playoff head coach. We just hired a guy who was in the semifinal. So I keep saying that because I'm not really sure people are picking up what should be put down on this. It's a grand slam hire. So now how's it going to work there? Well, it's all about spending, obviously. So Virginia Tech has talked at great length recently about how they're going to be more all in on spending. We'll see. Devil's always in the details there. I've got to imagine that they sold James Franklin on it because he had options. Now, I don't mean he had multiple offers on the table and he chose Virginia Tech out of all those offers. Don't forget, he had the option to just not coach. And James Franklin's a guy who is very, very well versed on what is and isn't good enough to win. So if they had an offer, they had a compensation package, they had a structure on the table from Virginia Tech that, according to him, wasn't going to be good enough to compete, he wouldn't have taken the job and he would have just either waited for Florida State to come open or he would have just sat it out. That's what he would have done. And he would have been well within his contractual rights to do so. So he took the job. And don't forget, like Brent Pry used to be on his staff and most recently got fired there. So I assume, unless those guys just don't talk anymore, that he got a really, really good scouting report on the program, on the town, on the administration, on the unique fabric that is Virginia Tech. And it didn't turn him off, and it may have turned him on to the job. So I've got to imagine like the due diligence was so thoroughly done, both sides of this equation, that now if the spending is there, and I've got a playoff caliber coach, guy's been rock steady, as consistent as they go forever at Penn State up until, like a month and a half ago, that Virginia Tech's going to achieve right in line with how much they're invested. So if you're invested to the level that Miami is, or not even that, if you're invested remotely within a nine iron of how they spend, or how Florida State spends, or how SMU spends, or how Clemson spends, and then you've got a really good staff, man, just the culture there in general is going to punch above its weight. But that's not an excuse to not spend. It's just if we can get close to them, we trust that that spirit at Virginia Tech is gonna do the rest for us. If we get 9/10 of the way, Virginia Tech itself will take us over the finish line. That sounds like rah-rah stuff, Some places it is. I think there's a little reality to that at Virginia Tech. So then the other part of this is, um, you know what the impact is here on the ACC? That was my first thought. I led with James Franklin and Virginia Tech because I know that's who's watching this. But me from a distance, I've just thought it's insane that the ACC's been as collectively down as it's been for a long time. That is the fault of Virginia Tech and Virginia. That's the fault of Florida State. That's the fault of Miami. Clemson's really the only one that's more than done its part in a conference that should be second best in the country or battling to be second best in the country at worst, but they haven't been. All right, so Virginia Tech's been part of that equation. This unequivocally proves Virginia Tech is taking football seriously. They're taking and investing in it seriously. So that's great. It doesn't guarantee the results. Although I'd say with James Franklin, you put a really, really high floor on what the possibilities are there. Like I really don't foresee disaster, bust type scenarios for James Franklin at Virginia Tech. It just all boils down to with the hire of James Franklin, are they also a little more all in on spending? Use the Ole Miss example. Not that you have to copy paste what Ole Miss did, but they've had Lane Kiffin there for a while. But what's the part B to that? They've also invested to the degree that Ole Miss had never been invested before. That's why they've been able to win there more so than Ole Miss has ever been able to win. It's not that Lane Kiffin had this magic elixir. He's been a great coach there, but a great coach with inadequate resources has a ceiling on him. And that'd be the same thing with James Franklin at Virginia Tech. But if you raise the ceiling there, he's going to get you to the ceiling. He's going to absolutely press his neck against the ceiling however high it is at Virginia Tech. I'm just excited about the impact on the ACC because folks just haven't had to worry about Virginia Tech. And now you'll have to worry about Virginia Tech. That's a really, really good thing. Virginia Tech being good is a great TV product as well. So that's a really good thing. And the other thing that I remember when I took a trip there, this was last year, met with everyone I could in the building, got a really good feel for sort of the pulse and the vibe of the program itself. And one thing everyone there understood is the previous staffs have not done the job of recruiting Virginia. And it's inexplicable. I know the fan base, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but you have to recruit Virginia. Virginia is a very talent-rich state. You have to recruit Virginia to win at Virginia Tech. Ohio State recruits Virginia. Penn State recruits Virginia. South Carolina recruits Virginia. They all do. They've been coming into your backyard, and for a long time, Virginia Tech itself has kind of been an afterthought there, which is just so inexplicable. So, as much as I'm excited about the impact of this hire on the ACC for Virginia Tech, I'm excited about the impact it has on recruiting because Virginia Tech will be a massive factor when it comes to in-state recruiting. I'm not saying they weren't. I'm saying they will be more of that now because James Franklin can sell himself like he's got proof of performance, pops, as we call them in the media industry. He doesn't have to have you guess as to whether he can win or not. He can absolutely win. And right out of the gate, let's also not forget that he's had like 17 kids decommit from the class that he had put together at Penn State. So maybe some of them jump on board. We'll see. I know it's early. I just think that if we had, again, gone back in time a year, 11 months, and we're watching James Franklin and Penn State head into the semifinal game against Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, and that thing comes down to the wire, like how would you have ranked James Franklin then? All right, participate in this exercise with me for a second. It's halftime of that semifinal game. It's the end of the third quarter, that semifinal game. James Franklin and Penn State are flying as high as they have at any point in his tenure. They are one quarter away from playing for a national championship game. Hit pause. That moment in time, how would you have ranked James Franklin? Probably a top 10 head coach nationally. How would you have ranked Penn State? Top 10 program nationally. That's conservative. And if you don't agree with that, it's probably just because you didn't like the guy for personal reasons. Because I mean, you're not saying anything other than, wow, this is a great job that he's done. 11 months later, that is the head coach of Virginia Tech with no scandal involved, no added context needed. They lost that game. This next season got off to an okay start, but it just went off the rails, and that's it. So my question is, if you would have agreed with me 11 months ago in that moment in time that Franklin's one of the best in the country. Not elite. I never said elite. I never said top five. I never said he's Kirby. I never said he's Ryan Day. I didn't say that. I said next tier down. Okay, if we mostly agreed that that's where he would have been placed in that moment in time 11 months ago, do you think he forgot how to do his job since then? Do you think he forgot what he once knew about football to raise him to that lofty a stature for most of you in your own mind? Or do we think that there was a perfect confluence of negative events this year and it happened the way it happened, but Franklin can still absolutely be the guy that you thought he was 11 months ago? Because I tend to believe in that latter scenario, that latter collection of thoughts. Therefore, I think this is going to be a really good thing there. It's going to be a really good thing. And then Virginia Tech, they did their part in hiring him. He's a grinder, man. Like, I don't ever worry about James Franklin. But I just I gotta see what the investment is. I know they're going to push their chips further in. How all in is Virginia Tech on football, and what does it look like when Virginia Tech is all in on football? I know that I've seen it as a kid. Now I want to see it as an adult.